We're now going to transition to the next presentation, and I'm going to turn this over to Clayton Spencer, who is the president of Bates. You've seen her a bit before in Dean Walton's presentation. She's going to introduce the presentation from Bates, and they're going to tell you about what they've been able to do at Bates through their Purposeful Work program.
Thank you, Keith. Hope everybody can hear me. For those of you who aren't familiar with Bates, we're a New England liberal arts college located in Lewiston, Maine, and have about 1,800 to 1,850 students on campus at any given point, with 2,000 making their way to degree. So we're not about scale. We're about really trying to do well what we do. So most liberal arts colleges have some version of a mission that they are preparing students for life, work, and social contribution. Yet liberal arts colleges in particular, as a type, have been skittish or skeptical about embracing openly the notion that they are preparing students for work. It's as though the purity of the liberal arts should not be sullied by the crass instrumentalism of actually helping students find jobs. When I became president of Bates in 2012, we were still trying to climb out of the trough of the Great Recession of 2009-10. When you remember, the trope was students home in their parents' basements, having paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for college and being baristas, different from the students home in their parents' basements doing COVID Zooming. But when I got here, I thought it was untenable, if not perverse, to be prissy about preparing students for work, particularly at a time when everyone in higher education and in our society is so concerned with well-being. I'm from the school of thought that the search for meaning and purpose is fundamental to the human quest. And this really means that happiness and well-being are byproducts of having a life that brings you meaning and purpose. And work, whether for money or not, in a formal job or not, individually or organizationally defined or not, is one of the primary sources from which human beings derive a sense of purpose. So at Bates, we embrace the notion that it is core to our mission as a liberal arts college to prepare our students for lives of purposeful work. A faculty committee spent a year in 2014 developing the intellectual case for this proposition. And then we set about designing and deploying and piloting and assessing elements of our program, which are curricular, co-curricular, and also represent certain elements associated with career services, which in the case of Bates, we reframed in 2017 as the Center for Purposeful Work. Today, I am joined by wonderful Bates colleagues who will highlight the way the concept of purposeful work is incorporated into the curriculum. So remember, it's just one aspect of the program, but it's one of the more interesting aspects since it shows a faculty embrace of something at a liberal arts college, of something that actually has to do with work. It is my pleasure now to introduce our wonderful Senior Associate Dean for Purposeful Work, Alan DeLong, who will in turn introduce two faculty colleagues, Alex Dogeroth and Laurie Banks, who have been especially creative in the way they have incorporated purposeful work into their courses. So Alan, I'll turn the virtual podium over to you.
Clayton, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today and to be able to talk with you about purposeful work at Bates. I want to be sure to give my Bates faculty colleagues ample time to present. So I'm not going to go in depth about the history of purposeful work or how both the philosophy and the offerings live on campus. As did many of you, I provided a one-pager to conference organizers that includes our contact information and links where you can find out more about what we'll discuss today. And I'd also like to flag that we're joined by Marianne Cowan, also from Bates, who is the Associate Director of the Center for Program Design, So I just want to start by saying that 9 times out of 10, when I'm asked about purposeful work from colleagues at other institutions, the question is either a toned down or a ramped up version of, how did you get faculty buy-in? So today we'll explore that question firsthand with 2 Bates College professors. Perhaps in individual conversations or at another time, we can provide more information about where and how purposeful work is situated and established in students' co-curricular lives, and more about our approach at the Center for Purposeful Work. So 2 quick notes about context, or my views about why this is working so well at Bates, which I feel comfortable crowing about because I had nothing to do with them. They predate me. I think part of the brilliance of the design in those early formative years was to keep purposeful work as a separate unit, reporting to the president, to Clayton. I suspect any other model, whether adding the philosophy to the then Career Development Center or situating purposeful work within academic affairs, for example, it could have felt more like a rebranding exercise rather than an innovative approach that allowed the philosophy to take hold across the campus over time. That early design team also sewed in a great deal of autonomy regarding how both staff and faculty colleagues could include purpose and meaning in their specific work with students. For example, today you'll hear about infusion courses, and in those we ask faculty to include 3 elements: purposeful work in infusion courses, 1 reading assignment, 1 reflective writing assignment, and the equivalent of 1 class sessions discussion, all 3 of those focused on finding connections between course content and purpose, meaning, and work. That's our model. Explore, reflect, and then move to the next steps, test. And that's baked into pretty much everything we do on campus. And that's it in terms of our light touch. We do have a faculty liaison who works with infusion courses, and they host a twice a semester meeting where faculty can share ideas. But in our model, we don't serve as an arbiter of what does or does not constitute purpose in work. And we don't present one right way to discuss work with Bates students. And I believe this approach has resonated greatly with the Bates community and contributed to our successes. As Clayton said, I'm just delighted to be joined today by 2 Bates College faculty members, Lori Banks, Assistant Professor of Biology, and Alex Doge-Roth, Professor of French and Francophone Studies. Both have been and continue to be incredibly generous with their time, and both on campus and electronically. One of the last times I spoke to Alex, it was part of a very similar presentation to today's, to colleagues across the United States, and Alex zoomed in from Switzerland. And Lori and I were most recently on a call with a Bates Junior and both the CEO and the Director of Quality from the Baxter Brewing Company, a Lewiston-based pioneer in the craft brewing industry and an important local business that's central to the revitalization of the downtown core. So Lori will talk about working with a purposeful work intern, and Alex will talk about an infused course. And I do want to note that this is really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how they both engage with students and with purposeful work at Bates. Alex will start us off today, and then we'll hand it off to Lori. And if there's time, I'll ask a few closing questions, and hopefully we'll have time for questions from you. So Alex, thank you for being with us today.
Hello, everyone. So I'm going to try to share a PowerPoint with you here. Okay. So can you see the PowerPoint? Okay, so I will start. So, so I'm teaching in the Department of French and Francophone Studies here at Bates. And so all my courses are in French. And we are lucky here in Lewiston, Auburn to have a vibrant Francophone community, both with Franco-Americans and more recent immigrants from sub-Saharan African countries who have immigrated in Bates. And so this also will play a certain role in the way here I have designed the Purposeful Work Infusion for this course. So this course is called very broadly Borders and Disorders in Francophone Literature and Film. So it's a title that allows me to do whatever I want because where there are humans, there's disorders and there are borders. So in this course, students address issues related to national identity, immigration, also the AIDS epidemics and the borders that are put into place here in the context of a pandemic, and then also social and economical inequalities by addressing works and unemployment. So the goal and the objectives of the course are something that is listed in all our syllabus, and that also reflects the department's agenda. And so you can read them. I'm not going to read them for you. But the major goal of this course is really to expose the students of stories that are not their own, and the diversity of topics we address through fictional works, documentaries, and films allows them to have this discussion and meet characters, people, trajectories, choices that people make in situation that is not the comfort of a classroom. And so then that's so it developed among others not only linguistic competency because everything is in French, but also intercultural awareness, developing also a sense of one's privileged positionality as we study that in the comfort of a classroom, and also being mindful of the diversity that exists also in the classrooms. That's also something that I will build on. And so therefore, the quote here of Martin Luther King is important to me because as we talk about purposeful work, it's always something that I would say engages more than oneself, and the purpose can only be found also in the impact and the interaction we have with others. So throughout the semesters, so I have different units that are thematically defined. And then I have 3 times during the semester, we have like a little pause where we reflect on what we studied and what are the skills that we developed, what are the perspectives and point of views that the students have discovered, encountered, how do they react, and so that those are those moments of self-reflection that are built within the course, and students write short essays and then also debate among themselves 3 times during the semester. And then thanks to the help of the Purposeful Work initiative, so we are able to invite guest speakers into our class and have a discussion with them. And so that's, I think, one of the key components here, because it really opens up, you know, like in the case of experience and learning, the door. So here I've invited Sue Roche, who is the director of ILAP, which is the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project in Maine. It's a nonprofit. So her work with immigrants and her background is something then that we discuss and try to find links about between what the students have read, the kind of awareness about not only the trajectory of the students, of the characters or the life they have studied, but also skills that they have developed, and what are the kind of skills that you would need if you would work for ILAP. And then another students here, Sarah Davis. So she took the class a certain number of years ago, and then after Bates created also this organization, Welcoming Maine. And in her words, so this course was important for her in order to see and identify how she could intervene within her community. And then, as Alan mentioned, so toward the end of the semester, there's a self-reflexive essay that the students have to write. So I model it here based on This I Believe, the series from NPR, which has a very, I would say, broad and open spectrum that is very, that opens up the mind of the students also, since it can go to, I would say, expected title, I believe in kindness, I believe in not being selfish, I believe in the generosity of giving, but also one of the favorite essays of the students is I believe in barbecue. And so I invite you also to check this one out. So, just to say that there's not there's no expectation about what the belief of the students want to try to connect the skills that we have explored in the class, and it's really an open space for them to do so. And then, so within the French department, out of this course also is born a kind of collaboration between the French department and then ILAP, where many of our students can then function as translators for this nonprofit, and really put, I would say here at work, a lot of the skills that they have developed in classes when it's about the trajectory of immigrants and the cultural awareness that handling those kinds of discussion require, in addition to the language competencies. So then some of the students that that are working, and this collaboration continues nowadays, have also then worked as interns, and one of them has then recently found and was hired by ILAP for a permanent job for the first time. So out of purposeful work here, a lot happened at the local level between our department and this organization. So that's how the Purposeful Work and Fusion worked for my class, and I stop here.
Alex, thank you for that very much. And I do hope at some point we'll get into questions, but I'd like to now introduce Lori and turn it over to you, Lori, to talk about what you've been working on.
Sure. So thank you very much, Alan and Clayton and the organizers of the meeting. You should be able to see, I think, yeah, there we go. We should be able to see slides now, yes? Okay. So yes, my approach to bringing purposeful work to the learning experience of my students has been a little bit different based on the nature of the work that I do. By training, I am a biologist. More specifically, I tend to work in like protein biochemistry, but sort of dabble in a few different areas. And so food, oddly enough, came up, number one, because I'm a foodie. And also, we have a number of local businesses, as Ellen said, that sort of were looking for a partnership with Bates, but also had a real need for some sort of laboratory science and equipment and expertise to help them solve some problems. And so I'm going to tell you about one that we worked on this summer that was really cool, where we were looking at making better beer with science equipment. So just sort of philosophically, one thing I try to do, whether it's in the classroom or with my laboratory students that work with me after school or during the summer, is to get them to understand that science, the way that we sort of learn it, especially as undergraduates, is not as siloed as we think it is, and that there are a lot of complex problems in the world that we can really help with, but it's going to take a multidisciplinary approach. And so while we tend to think that certain aspects of chemistry stay in the chemistry classroom or the laboratory, and things for biology exist only in that realm, there's obviously quite a bit more crosstalk and different techniques and things that sort of probe lots of different areas of science, of math and physics and engineering and all these things we bring together. And so I'm always looking for opportunities for them to be able to really see in practice how these things come together in ways that they can answer real questions that are out there in the world. And so I've had the privilege of working with the Purposeful Work folks, both in coursework and internships. And it turns out that, being able to find these questions that students can work on really is sort of inspired by what needs there are out in the community. And so it's really nice to be able to not only build those relationships, but also to really be doing something that is of service to others, in the area that you live and work. So this summer, my student, Emily Tamkin, who is currently only a junior, started working on a project with me involved with Baxter Brewing here in Lewiston. Back when she was a freshman, she initially started working on a project looking at yeast genetics from different batches of beer with the brewmaster Merritt Waldron, and you see a picture of the two of them in the back of the house at Baxter there. But we weren't able to follow up on that project right away because the world shut down and COVID happened. So an opportunity came up that Merritt had a really interesting question that he needed some assistance with. Clearly, they don't have a full-scale biochemical laboratory in the back of the house of the brewery. And so we had some equipment and reagents and Emily's time that she was interested to use to answer this question, where they were considering the amount of hops that they use in given recipes to achieve a certain bitterness outcome or taste profile in some of their beers. And so the backstory on this is that there's a calculation method that Merritt and his team had been using, but they had a hypothesis that it was probably out of date based on the way that beers are being brewed currently, where there's a lot more late process hop adage. And so they wanted to essentially make sure that they weren't using too much, because hops are really expensive. And at the quantities that they were using them there at Baxter, being able to decrease that amount and still be able to get a good product the way that you want it is going to ultimately affect the bottom line of the company. And that's, clearly what we want to be helping there. So we had a meeting and decided that, being able to at least take a look at this using the scientific method would be able to get them some information that would help them do some process improvements. And so this is a figure made by Emily, which just is amazing. Her graphic art skills, in addition to her science, is just kind of awesome. But what she did was, where you see the little pipettes there, she and Merritt and some other members of his team took samples from different points in the brewing process. Again, I think they tested 6 or 7 different beers that they brewed through the summer, just to look at the concentration of these bittering chemicals to see how they compared to the calculations that Merritt was using previously. And so you could see, just to make sure that there was no sample degradation or anything like that, she was picking up samples a couple times a week. And we actually had to get her like a pass from the local police because she wasn't of age to transport the samples yet. So we had to find a way around that. But in the name of science, we were able to get it done. So she used a spectroscopic method, again, where she was taking samples and doing organic extractions, essentially, to be able to quantify these isoalpha acids, or the bittering compounds in the beer, and compiled the data into a report that she was able to then deliver to the brew staff, and actually ended up with enough data that we are now currently working on a publication for the American Society of Brewing Chemists to put this story out there about, there's a better way to calculate the compounds that you're looking to get in your final product so that you're not overspending on hops, is essentially what we were able to work out. In other interesting outcomes of this situation, because it was so cool, as Alan talked about, we had a meeting with the president of Baxter Brewing, and decided that rather than just having a back of the house meeting with the brewing staff and possibly some sort of internal symposium at Bates, we are going to have Beer Science Night at Baxter coming up here in October, where we're going to open up to the broader Bates community a night where Emily is going to get up and give her presentation and show her data. And the folks at Baxter decided it would also be a really cool idea, and I agree, that people who are of age, of course, that are in the house that night that would like to purchase a flight of the beers that she tested in her experiments will be able to have those on hand as well. So they'll be able to taste the differences in the level of bitterness between the different beers that she's talking about in her research. So, in what we thought would just be a single internship, a couple weeks of science for her to do a paid gig for the summer, now has turned into this science class for our Lewiston Auburn community, which I think is pretty cool. And we're really looking forward to see how this is going to go. We have a couple weeks until this rolls out. So around this project, Ms. Tamkin has gotten quite a bit of buzz and actually was recently featured on one of our local news channels. And so she's, like I said, looking forward to publish her work. But as a result of participating in this project, really has sort of shifted the focus of some of her plans for after graduation, although she's got like a whole other year of college to go. She's currently considering graduate programs in viticulture, enology, and brewing science, because this turned out to just be something that was, kind of out of the box, not quite what most of our biology students think about when they're coming in. A lot of them want to go into medical school, but they're able to see, again, with these different experiences, that there are lots of different ways that you can answer questions and use science to solve problems out there in the community, because there's a lot to be done. So with that, you can see here the Banks Lab at Bates. You can check out more information about us on Twitter if you're interested. And I will hand it back off to Alan.
Did you really just say that her work generated a buzz?
Pun completely not intended.
I couldn't let that go. That was you just passed it off so smoothly. I wanted to check.
That is awesome. Keith, so I think we are at time. Do we have time for a question, or do you want to move on and we can move the questions to tomorrow? Marianne and Clayton and I'll be here.
I think that would be great if we can move them on to tomorrow. We will have some time to tomorrow. And again, I think you were saying, Alan, you prepared a very nice one-pager describing the project. There is a lot of material on the website. I encourage people to go and look at that. Of course, there's opportunities to connect with people directly through the chat, through email, and people will be back tomorrow. So my apologies for having to end here for this session. Fabulous, really interesting in the way that you're engaging students in a lot of creative, interesting ways. I'm sure you're having a huge impact at Bates, and it's something that really we can all learn from in thinking about how we interact with our students and think about opportunities for their future.
Yeah.
We are down to the last
Excuse me,
few.
Keith, can I just interject one thing? I just want to
Absolutely.
formally thank both Professors Banks and Dozeroth for joining us today for this. Yeah, thank you for all that you do on campus and also this, which is not on campus, by the way. So thank you.